Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. We have an IOTA video for you guys today, IOTA on the exchange. It's one of my favorite projects to always talk about. It's one I've held for some time. I'm very interested in the technological aspects of this fantastic technology that IOTA brings. We do have an intro video to this which we did a while back. Do go check that out. I'll leave it in the description as well if you can't find that. And also, before we go straight into this one, don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Apologies for the background noise. It is decided to hailstone here in the UK. We had a great summer which lasted a week. We had over the last couple of weeks, and yeah, now it's pretty much disappeared and we're back to normal grey, rainy skies. So hopefully you guys out there, wherever you are, have some sunshine at least compared to where I am. So guys, let's go straight into this one. A couple of pointers to make on this. So IOTA is very heavily involved and integrated within the European Commission and certainly through the blockchain infrastructure aspects as well. It's very important. When we talk about regulation, the standardization, particularly things like ISO 20022 that have come in from more the financial messaging services areas, but also the standardizations that apply within these infrastructures too. And if you maybe perhaps don't know about the EU, obviously there's a multitude of different countries and regions within that one continent, and it's very important that they can all talk to each other, not just talking about over the phone, but from a technological perspective is very important as well, whether that's banking or the supply chain, and certainly things with regards to things like border control, passport control, utilizing the elements of blockchain to verify and process people in magnitudes of numbers per second. We'll go on to that in a second because I think there was a Shimmer update recently that was boasting finality time of 800 milliseconds, I think, MS. So it's really interesting, the development, how they're doing this, and potentially feeless as well. So a lot of projects out there, you're utilizing the token aspects of the chain or the technology, but with IOTA, they kind of boast this feeless aspect to it, or certainly to the very, very, very lowest numbers possible that you can't even notice that they're going in and out of the infrastructure. So there's all this going on in terms of the background, creating the framework, but the most recent updates is regarding this, and I think it's a really valid point here because IOTA is very heavily involved in things like digital identities, a load of other things, but I actually pulled this one out because I thought it was quite relevant. The customs and border management. They've been doing a lot of trials in Africa, which we covered quite a while ago now, maybe like 6-7 months ago, and the utilization of DLT, distributed ledger technology, and IOTA's technology to encourage better communication, a better opportunity to track and trace things like transportation, supply chain, etc., but also to verify things as they come through the port. Can you imagine that being a strenuous task with all the lorries and all the aircraft coming in and out of countries? Here in the UK, it's pretty crazy all the time, especially at the ports of Folkestone, where you've got obviously people coming over from France, from the various countries in Europe, and same across a multitude of other airports and port systems as well. So IOTA provides a really massive service and opportunity to really scale that up, but also to not only identify but also verify things and process that on the blockchain as in a permanent factor. And this, when we talk about AI, artificial intelligence, and certainly data algorithms, is really important. We're looking at things like supply and demand forecasting, the logistics of things. It all ties in really well together. And one of the other big things which mentioned, of course, is the digital identities. Some people call it like DIDs. Some formulations of this can be decentralized, but we're moving a lot of the infrastructure as we see. Certainly when you look at European Commission levels and the EU government levels, of course, a lot of it is centralized, and there's obviously reasons for that. But this is very much about you being identifiable as your own being, but in a digital identity, whether that's number focused or based on an app or based on biometrics, which we'll talk about in a second, hence the point mainly of this video. The actual fact of the matter is that whether it's biometric, facial recognition, or QR codes, whatever it might be, that it operates through a very quick, easy system. And that same thing will be applied in the near future. Some countries already do. I think Australia actually did. Digital passports, driving licenses, and things on our phones, or even just through our biometric layouts as well. So there's lots of big things coming in that way. But I'll revert back to this. You'll have to start scanning your fingerprints to enter Europe in 2024. Now, This is interesting. I used to work heavily in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity and security in general. So I know all about the biometric aspects and facial recognition and things like this. And it's quite funny because years and years ago, people were like, I'll never use this. I'll never have facial recognition, blah, blah. Well, the news is that pretty much since 2001, facial recognition has been used. Obviously, 2001 was a relative catalyst. I think you will know what went on, and of course it was a catalyst to improve certainly integrate a lot more security related aspects. Privacy, data regulations came in heavily, and that has continued throughout today, where we've now got the opportunity not just for the machines and devices at a very good cost opportunity for companies, organizations, things like we just said about points of interest like airports, etc., to be able to integrate this. But the technology behind it is also there now as well. Cloud systems, API systems, talking to one another, the utilization of blockchain for all the things we just mentioned before as well. And IOTA could have a massive, massive opportunity within this. And it's not just IOTA. I'm not singling these guys out at this point of this video, obviously being IOTA focused. There are a multitude of projects that operate in these certain areas as well, especially if you think about other things like in the DAG protocol. So those that don't know, IOTA... and don't get this confused with Constellation's DAG, by the way. They are the same, similar technologies. DAG, if you don't know what that is, direct acyclic graph, we have a really cool video that I did a bit of a breakdown on. I'll leave, again, that one at the end of this video in the description. But it's all about that kind of umbrella effect that I just mentioned a moment ago, intertwining all those different factors like AI, logistics, supply chain, harvesting, seeding, everything we could possibly think of. And that includes all of these things as well. So there's going to be a registration aspect of trying to get your information into these systems, which of course be stored arguably on blockchain in the very near future anyway, but also the aspect of making things a bit faster in terms of transportation, in terms of movement of people around the world, around countries, and transportation between like inter-countries, if you like, if you're doing changeovers, etc. So this is really interesting to see this massive development, because as I said, years ago, people would have argued to never touch this stuff, even though we kind of do. But more importantly, that we won't really have a choice, to be honest, because it will just it is already coming into law, into practice, as are many other things like CBDCs, etc. over the next few years. You won't have a choice to not use them unless you just don't want to go traveling and sit in your house. But it's a really interesting move from this, and it kind of intertwines with that kind of theory around the sustainability aspect, speeding things up, the efficiency, certainly from a privacy data perspective, finance, blockchain, etc. We talk about it a lot from the World Economic Forum and sort of procedures that they're putting in place leading up to 2030, and that really ignites other areas as well. I'm just going to bring this out because this is part of digital identity, of course. So this is really big. United Nations taking over the EU COVID certificate program. I knew this would happen eventually. Those that don't know, UN and a load of other organizations work heavily under the World Economic Forum. Of course, a lot of entities have created these different apps and these different reasonings behind this. Could it for sure relate with CBDCs as time goes by? I'm pretty confident it would. Is that a good thing, a bad thing? Totally up for debate. I know lots of people have some very ruthless comments and thoughts and opinions about that, and rightly so. Do feel free to vent the frustrations in the comments. I'm always open to both sides of the pillar, if you like. I said the word pillar as I just read that. Weird. A central pillar of the EU's COVID response, the EU Digital COVID Certificate, is being scaled up to global level. Quickly became a global standard. We worked hard with our international partners to ensure that their national certificates could be recognised under the EU COVID certificate framework. So it's building a picture here, guys. And this is why I talk about my things we invest in and things I'm interested in, because I see the pattern. I've worked in all these kind of different industries, so I know what's coming anyway in the near future, as well as what's going in right now. So I may have been scared, perhaps because of misunderstanding it or not knowing what it really was. There's loads of things: AI, deep learning, machine-to-machine learning. We talk about a lot of that in IOTX videos. Again, I have a lot of experience in that, and certainly working experience in those industries. It's quite staggering what's coming. But the implication is at the moment that we've got apps, we've got certifications on there. Eventually our physical identities will go on there. Everything will then transfer. And I've always said this, the apps and the smartphones are a stepping stone for us to get used to this formality of everything being concluded into one area. I see Twitter going down the same route of DIDs. Think about it, Twitter is a giant database, and it's already an algorithm of data of people's behavior, the arguments, the opinions, the thoughts. You could really categorize trends and everything just from some really unique research in the back end of Twitter, taking everyone's data. But you as a holder of data, you as an individual should be rewarded for providing your data, etc., etc. And that's certainly something that will be incorporated utilizing that blockchain theory as well. But eventually we will move away from the smartphone and the apps into retina displays, into biometrics, into ID chips and things like this to help with our healthcare, etc., understand our nutrition, our heart rates, etc., for automated healthcare. Quite crazy, really. But that's where we loop back around to that DAG system of how IOTA is an umbrella, a spider system to incorporate all of these things together. You can imagine all of the systems talking to each other, whereas at the moment it's also individual and for their own data protection rights, etc., for us people, supposedly, even though we know that most companies sell our data to other companies. Fact of the matter is, one of the potential pros of all this is that we have full transparency of where our data goes, who's got it, and can we charge people for it? i.e., give me the tokens, guys, and I want to convert them to the crypto that I want to use, or turn them into CBDC fiat money, who knows? But it's really interesting development, guys, as this proceeds. One of the other things to mention about this, biometric surveillance ban upheld as EU Parliament adopts the AI Act. How much more clearer can we be, guys, of the path that we are going down? Those that are perhaps thinking this will never happen, it won't happen in my lifetime, not perhaps, I hate the words conspiracy theories because I think it's really important that everyone has an open mind. These things were talked about for many, many years. Whether you like him or not, I followed David Icke for a long time. He spoke about all this stuff in 2015 in the documentaries. Maybe even there's some from the 90s he talks about this. But he saw the pattern and the path. And I've seen it more and more clearly as I've worked in the industries. And certainly investing in these projects has opened my mind to be like, what am I actually invested in? What is blockchain? What is DAG? And then you incorporate that into the real world mechanism of like, oh, okay, what's coming? And then you see all these things suddenly coming out of nowhere where people didn't agree to them, didn't vote for them, but they're here anyway, and we have to get used to them. That's just simply how the world works, guys. But this AI Act is absolutely phenomenal. Piece of the play and piece of the puzzle when it comes to blockchain. This article doesn't specifically mention blockchain, but the fact of the matter is they are all being integrated, guys. So here's what I was kind of mentioning just a minute ago, actually. Some people's comments about it. Absolutely very strange, guys, what's kind of occurring around the world right now. I never thought, as much as I thought as when I was younger, I was a bit of a weird kid. I used to write articles about nanotechnology and weird stuff because I just had a fascination of technology and future, and now to actually see a lot of this future entailing into reality is like, oh, I didn't really expect this to happen. It was more like a sci-fi thing in my head, and actually that this is a possibility, and now we're here. And it's all going to start talking to each other, guys. It's absolutely mental. As we approach more cashless society, we approach the BUI systems, CBDCs, the integration of blockchain, AI, algorithm, AR, VR, metaverse. Don't you think it's very odd? And don't get me wrong, this has all been planned for a long time, but it's very odd that they're all coming into fruition at the same time as we lead to 2025 and they switch the RTGS system and all the CBDCs will switch on, and we enter this very interesting path leading up to that Agenda 30 finalisation. I don't know when the next agenda will be signed off. The last one was around 2015, hence the Agenda 30. It's a downloadable document from the UN. You can easily do it yourselves. Full information about sustainability, diversification, society, finance, everything that they're planned ahead. The last one before that, I believe, was 91-92, which was the Agenda 21 programme. Well, we all know what happened towards the end of that one, and that secured and ticked off those boxes. The next 5, 6, 7 years, guys, are going to be absolutely mental, to the point maybe potentially a dystopian mentality, but sometimes you have to embrace certain things. Yes, you can argue them, you can protest them, but ultimately I'm interested as an investor in the technologies that are behind a lot of this stuff. Whether it's a way out or not is another question, but the point of the matter is, guys, this is not conspiracy theory. This is happening, guys. It's in front of our eyes. And the governments, the laws that have been put on here, this was updated 23rd of June. Again, convenient time with all the rest of the announcements. This is biometric information introduction, fully accessible to the whole entire general public. So they can turn around and say, yes, we've had this information categorically for a long time for the general public. You just may not have found it yourselves. So I'm just putting that out there, guys, to have a read through all this kind of stuff. I'm sure in your own countries, if you're not in the UK, have various different things as well. Look at this, all in here. NHS, DWP. Think about the healthcare blockchain projects out there, like Solvecare as an example. We, by the way, got an interview with those guys very soon. And then, yes, of course, the incorporation of other areas within it too is quite amazing, really. So yeah, facial imagery and 10 dry electronic finger scans. This is happening, guys, right in front of our eyes. On top of that, guys, just some really quick points here. This was from the 2nd of July, literally a few days ago. This is off the back of one of the updates from IOTA in general. Something that I find quite exciting, the protocol upgrade, congestion control. This is where I mentioned earlier about the speed of things, etc. But certainly very cool to see the continuation and development of this. Again, relating to Agenda 30, this whole aspect of energy efficiency, faster transactions, all of these things coming into play. And there was actually some really interesting news. I'll try and find it again quickly. In terms of some investment coming in, which was really cool. Swiss One, there we go. Swiss One launches ecosystem fund for IOTA and Shimmer. I'm not sure if it mentioned here somewhere, but there's an investment around 10,000 euros. So this will help further the development of IOTA, and also telling you a bit more information here about their plans with that. And one also last point here, this is from a couple months ago, of course, but just to reiterate, the compliance of ISO 20022, a lot of people got bogged down with that and maybe misunderstood it. I've always said from the very beginning that this is part of standardization of financial messaging. It's not massively, I mean, it does have a massive relation to blockchain and the use of digital currencies, of course, but it had no bearance to anything else that I've seen across the board. But the point being is that there's huge integration, not just with IOTA, but a multitude of other projects that I'm sure you've got in your portfolio, as I do, where we're really seeing some giant integration with huge organizations and protocols such as Swift, where IOTA will start really fully integrating this massive system of itself and an ecosystem in general. So it's really interesting, guys. It's really interesting to see the developments, the partnerships, the integrations through frameworks, as we mentioned with European Foundation and European Commission, and other areas in the world too. And just stuff like this is really important to understand. The Shimmer part of this is a big part of the EVM protocol and test netting that's going on within the IOTA system, boasting some extremely good average block times here, but also the amount that it's proceeding to. It's really on target with this feeless promotion, this feeless narrative that it's been pushing. And as I said, it's one of my favorite projects to always talk about. It's certainly one I like to feel I got in early. I'm trying to take advantage of the current price points, which we'll go into in a second. But the point being is that this is going to be a formidable project, not just as we speak now, but for the future. Please do understand what's going on around Europe, around the world, the integration of AI, etc. IoT will be one of the forefronting companies in this. It's in my top 5 for sure, for most of those main reasons, to be honest, but I have a giant understanding of its capabilities, as I said, because of the industries I've worked in. Very interesting indeed. That's not to say you have to buy it. I fully recommend you research it. Definitely look at the intro video that we did, because I do go deeply into why it's such a significant technology and project. So keep an eye out for that at the end of this one and in the description. Also, guys, that's a bit of a roundup. Tried to be as quick as I could. Let's go straight into the chart of IOTA. So at the moment, obviously taking this information from Binance, so data-wise. So the last time I did the video, we were sort of looking at these potential buy areas. Those came in a couple of times over the last few months since the last video. As we've seen more recently, back here in May, I think that was roughly around near the time we did the last video. But we've seen a couple of opportunities. That's all well and good showing you that, but it doesn't help us right now, right? So I'm just going to pull this one across and also one of the macro ones in one of the most recent low points and one of the most recent high points. So we see a bit more structure in what might be lying ahead for us in terms of potential opportunity for accumulation and where we see this chart maybe going. So at the moment, we see on the bottom left the RSI Relative Strength Index. This kind of gives us an average, if you like, over a set period of times. 14-day, 90-day, 28. Don't ask me why it's in a different order. I couldn't figure out how to fix it and still haven't done it. But the point being, for me personally, obviously 0 to 100, 59 is still quite high on the 14 days. So if you are a short-term trader, someone that perhaps day trades or on a weekly basis, it's still relatively high in my opinion, in the sense that there's not a giant amount of room to move forwards. Okay, so you're talking about that 40-point system, right? If this gradually comes back down to sort of 45 to 42 region, that tends to be my bite point, and it's more confirmation as well as the visual representation on the chart that we're in a position to try and accumulate with more upside than there is downside. Now, for me personally, I do look at that, but I'm a long-term holder and accumulator of IOTA. I'm more interested personally in the kind of price points that we hit at these lower regions to go, actually, in previous times with IOTA, if we just scroll all the way back here to 2021, we hit the highs of around $2 plus. In fact, I think we even went higher before that, up here to 260. So that gives you an idea of where we could go in the next bull cycle. And beyond that, I do anticipate IOTA to be a minimum of $5 in the next bull run. Whenever that might be, I do still believe it will be around the 2025 mark, just because of all the integrations, the application in real world, etc. And that includes IOTA. So when you think about it from a representative perspective, you could argue that whether it's 15 cents or 20 cents, it's still a damn sight cheaper than where it will be in the future. Just from my perspective, that 5 cents difference of 20 and 15 does make a significant difference if you're trying to accumulate IOTA in big batches like I try to do. However, where we are right now, both on the macro and the long term, we can see in the longer term area, we're still undecided if this particular area of around 15 cents is a definitive support area. Certainly something that we picked out in previous videos back here that relate to around January 2020 and May 2020 respectively. Of course, we had a bit of the crash in between there with March, and it took itself up for the 2021 cycle uptrend. So right now, my mindset is thinking, okay, cool, we're approaching this area, we'll for sure do a retest because it kind of really matches around these previous areas where we saw support. But now we're starting to see a bit of resistance in that same trend area. So there's an argument to say that we could bobble around this area. I don't think just yet there's enough volume kicking in to push us again back up to these top spots. Not to say it won't happen. But for me personally, I'm just waiting, lingering around that 17 cent mark. And I've still always got my buy orders just above that 15 cent mark. So they're my two areas of accumulation. If I was, selling, it would be a different story. I don't have too much intuition on that until I get to those periods of time in my own right. But for those that do day trade, as I said, well, you guys probably know what you're doing anyway. But the point being is that just keep an eye out for this, because we might see some support at this 18 cent level, and it might just again test that 20 cent. Potentially stabilize itself up there for a bit and carry itself before we hit it back down. But in my honest opinion, I still think we really need to identify and confirm these 15 cent marks as official support lines. And I don't think we've quite fully done that yet, which is why I continue to have those buy areas down there. On the other side of this, on the 90 days, 47, which isn't too bad from a long trade perspective, and the 28 day on that monthly is in the middle ground, so it's not far off. That's why I'm just being a bit more patient over the next few days, see if it stabilizes or not. If it doesn't, that's where I see it coming to test that 16.82 to 17 cent mark potentially as well. So aside from that, guys, has had a very nice move over since the 11th of June up until today. I'm just going to quickly stick in the price range just to give a bit of an identification of how far that went up. It's about 55%. Taking it from that marker of the 10th of June all the way to the 27th of June there, of course, into July now. So the representation of that is on the performance on the right hand side here. We can see it's up on the week, not massively. It's up slightly on the 6 months, and the year to date is not looking amazing, to be honest. It's these ones where I still sit here and go, I could see the lower areas, simply because we just haven't got the traction in the market still yet. Don't anticipate that to happen at all this year. We might have a mini cycle, but I do anticipate we're going to have that big leg up through 2024 to 2025 as we incorporate and interject blockchain technologies across the world, and the real use cases kick in. No more talk, no more development. I'm sure it will continue to develop, of course, but what I mean is this real world scenario kicks in, and that's where I think it will fly. And I do think we could hit that $5 mark quite comfortably in the next big bull cycle for IOTA, as a minimum, I believe, as a minimum. I mean, if you went on data, you could argue that we could go a lot higher than that. In fact, just for fun, let's just have a quick look at that. It's a rough representation of that, but you could argue that kind of confirms at least the 420 between $7. So this could be a good area to potentially get us to. It really depends when this switch over happens. So just to keep an eye on that. You've heard it first here. If we get to $7 in the next bull cycle, that's probably why. But I do anticipate $5 minimum, at least a retrace probably back to this area's a bit of volatility around the 420 mark. Let's see how that transpires. I'm going to make a note actually to reference that in 2024. I might even write it on here. Remember 2024. Let's I might even sign it with today's date just so we can see what happens in the future, like a time capsule. Cool, guys, that's very much a bit of a wrap up of this video. Hope you learned a bit more about IOTA here, and definitely really think outside the box, guys, about the projects you invest in, and take that application forth or forwards with what you're investing in as well, in particular with IOTA. It's absolutely fascinating what's to come. So keep an eye out for that, and keep an eye out for our next batch of videos over the next couple of days. Nice fun one tomorrow. I'm not sure if I will have the recording or not, but I'll do a bit of an announcement in the community after this video. Keep an eye out for tomorrow's video. I think it'll be quite cool. It's a really cool podcast with a really cool other person that does some great videos, very well known. So look forward to seeing that out in the wild. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next IOTA update video. Take care. Bye bye.